I met my girlfriend, Victoria, 7 months ago in a bar. We felt an instant connection and started dating 3 days later. She brought nothing but happiness into my life, the perfect definition of a soulmate. When I graduated from university, we both agreed to move in together. Victoria is 2 years older than me and was already working, so I moved into her house. However, after moving in, everything went downhill. The first incident happened on our first night together. Victoria works the night shift, so she was getting ready to head out. "Babe, I'm off to work now. Just to remind you, the neighbors next door get a little cranky at night, so just ignore them," she said sweetly. Yeah, I get it," I responded. I gave her a kiss goodbye, and she left, leaving me alone in her house. I sat down at the kitchen table and got to work. For context, I work remotely as a character designer for a video game company. It was peaceful for a few hours until the clock hit 2 a.m. The cranky neighbors began screaming profusely. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like an intense argument. I tried ignoring it for a while, but eventually, the noise became unbearable. There was banging on the walls, glass shattering on the floor, followed by more screaming and arguing. It sounded like multiple voices overlapping each other. I tried blasting music in my headphones, but that didn't help. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, so I called it a night and stopped working. The next day passed by in a flash. I chose not to tell Victoria about the neighbors since she had warned me, and I didn't want her to think it bothered me too much. It was her house, after all. Nighttime came, and I was watching TV on the sofa when the arguments from the neighbors started again. Thumping, glass shattering, furniture being thrown around. You'd think their house was a WWE ring. Jesus Christ, I muttered to myself. Suddenly, I heard banging on the door, followed by a blood-curdling scream. "What the fuck?" I said, pausing the movie I was watching. The neighbor was trying to break into the house. That was the last straw. I got up and went to the back door where the banging and screaming were coming from. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen table in case the man broke the door down. Thank God it was locked. Just in case, I leaned against it, each punch reverberating through my back. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking. I didn't know what to do. For all I knew, the man could seriously hurt me. It felt like an eternity before the banging stopped. Concurrently, the screaming ceased, and everything went silent. "What the fuck?" I muttered under my breath. There was no way I was going to live in these conditions. I decided to confront Victoria about it when she got home. With that in mind, I made sure all the doors were locked, the windows shut, and then went to bed. A few hours later, at 6 a.m., my girlfriend came home and laid down in bed next to me. She hugged me from behind and gave me a kiss on the nape, waking me up. "How's everything?" she asked softly. "Were the neighbors loud?" I grunted and turned to face her, rubbing my eyes. "What?" Victoria giggled. "How did it go with the neighbors?" I found it strange that she asked me that today but not yesterday. Maybe I was just tired. "The husband tried breaking in," I said. "He banged on the door for at least 2 minutes, screaming. I thought that was the end for me. Seriously, Victoria, I don't think this house is safe for us to live in. As long as the door is locked, you should be fine," she said sweetly, smiling. I gave Victoria a serious look. "Listen, I can't live with these conditions," I said, trying to be as nice as possible. "I didn't even feel safe in this house last night. You're telling me this is going to happen every single night?" Victoria looked down, her eyelids drooping in discomfort. I felt sorry for blaming her for something that wasn't her fault, but we obviously needed to do something about it. "I can't fear for my life every night. I'll call the wife tonight and see if anything can be done," she said, hugging me tightly. "Okay?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, baby. I know it's not your fault, but it's impossible to live in fear in my own house every night. The following evening, Victoria left for her night shift. Once again, I was alone in her house. She texted me about 15 minutes later, telling me that the problem was solved and that it should be better tonight. I thanked her and laid down on the sofa to wind down. I ended up falling asleep while watching a movie. I woke up a few hours later at 4 a.m. to screaming from the psychotic neighbors once again. Furious, I got up and prepared myself for confrontation. I was ready to finally get to the bottom of this. However, as I walked closer to the front door, something felt off. I noticed the voices and banging were a little closer than usual. As if they were in the same house. It was the first time I ever paid attention to where the sound was truly coming from, but it was still unexpected. Subtle, but unexpected. Following the sounds, the screams didn't lead me to the front entrance or to the house next door. They took me to the basement door, the only part of the house I hadn't gone into yet. My heart began racing. This had to be my imagination. The sounds couldn't be coming from my girlfriend's basement, right? With my legs trembling, I tried to push the basement door open, but it was locked. The attempt only resulted in even louder screams coming from downstairs. They sounded like cries for help. "What the fuck is down there?" I muttered. The thought alone sent shivers down my spine. Thankfully, or unthankfully, my uncle taught me lockpicking when I was younger in case I was ever in a dangerous situation. Thanks, Uncle Will. If there was ever an opportunity to use that skill, it was now. I took 2 paper clips and started fidgeting with them inside the lock. In just a few minutes, the door unlocked, but it still wouldn't open. I looked around the house for anything I could use until I found a crowbar. Using all my might, I pushed the door open. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. Instantly, I heard loud, blood-curdling screams piercing my ears, screams you would only hear in horror movies. Covering my ears, I forced my way downstairs. What I saw was horrific. The dead bodies of dozens of men were lined up neatly on the floor across the basement. Worse, every man there looked to be around my age, many resembling the exes Victoria had mentioned in passing. Above them was a jar. Inside it appeared to be their faces, glowing with a strange light. They were screaming in absolute, agonizing pain. From what I saw, it looked like their souls, sealed, trapped souls of innocent men facing endless pain in the afterlife. The stench was unbearable. Their bodies were bled out, as if everything inside of these men had been sucked out, leaving only their pure skin. Despite that, their faces were somewhat recognizable, each body carefully preserved to maintain its original shape. Their names were written in blood in front of each body. Jack, Noah, Michael, and many others. Their screams sounded more like loud gasps up close. The room was so loud I was getting dizzy. The screams only grew louder, the sound screeching into my brain. My mind went blank, my body shaking at the thought that this was my girlfriend's doing. It got even worse when I reached the end. Another name was written in blood, with no body behind it, as if it was still being prepared. Dylan. That was my name. I then got a notification on my phone. A message from Victoria. My heart stopped just by reading it. "Hey babe, I'm home. Sorry about yesterday. Let's have some fun tonight."